Hey there, let me introduce you to the Patchwork Power mini quilt pattern as part of the 2025 Machine Sampler Minis. This is a bold and playful design that's perfect for making your very own sewing machine mini quilts. This pattern features the stitch and flip method, which makes it easy to create all those angled details without complicated piecing. So whether you're decorating your sewing space or gifting it to a fellow maker, this mini quilt is as fun to sew as it is to display in your room. Let's get to it. I'm here on page 4 of the Patchwork Power pattern to show you just how helpful fabric labels can be for this project. Each label includes the number of pieces you'll cut, listed in parentheses, along with the size of the piece. These will help you keep track of everything from the cutting instructions on the next page. Since the pattern includes so many pieces in different sizes, I highly recommend using the labels to stay organized and keep your momentum as you sew. On the next page, you'll see the piecing chart where each section and piece is labeled to show exactly what part of the quilt you're working on. And just so you know, the labels that you did cut out will correspond to the pieces that are shown in the piecing chart. The next page of the pattern will be the cutting instructions page, where there's also a piece count column that shows you how many of each piece you will need for this mini quilt. The bold letters are the piece names, and they do match the fabric labels that I've cut out and I'm using here for this project. At this point, I've cut out all of my pieces and placed fabric labels on each stack, arranged in alphabetical order. This order also matches how they appear in the pattern, with the exception for SF, which stands for Stitch and Flip, and FG, which stands for Flying Geese. These are grouped separately. I'm going to jump right in here with the snowball or the stitch and flip method using pieces A, B, C, and D, along with the 1-inch SF squares. Start by placing one stitch and flip square right sides together on the corner of a larger piece. Sew a diagonal seam straight across the small square. I recommend shortening your stitch length at your sewing machine a bit to help secure those tiny 1-inch squares. Go ahead and do this on all 4 corners of pieces A, B, C, and D, and I'll meet you back here to show you what it will look like. Here's what it looks like once those 1-inch squares are sewn onto all 4 corners of pieces A, B, C, and D. You'll notice that the seam lines form a soft oval shape, which gives these corners a nice rounded look. Now it's time to trim the extra fabric a 1/4 inch outside of each seam. Since it's a small amount of fabric to trim, I just like to snip the corners off with scissors. And after trimming, press those triangle flaps open at the ironing station to complete that rounded corner effect. Go ahead and do this to the corners on all A, B, C, and D pieces. And that's it. You've officially used the stitch and flip method. Your A, B, C, and D pieces should now look like this. Next, I'm going to use the same process on pieces E and F. These are separated out in the pattern from A, B, C, and D because we're only going to add the triangle corners to the top 2 corners of each of these pieces. Go ahead and use the remaining SF squares, and just like before, place them right sides together on the top corners, sew a diagonal line, trim a 1/4 inch away from the seam, and press the triangle corners open. Here are all of my stitch and flip units, including E and F, where we added new corners to just the top 2 sides. Now it's time to use the same technique to make flying geese. These units will form the center of our sewing machine block and are also key to building the sawtooth star. Start by taking your flying geese rectangles and G squares. Place one G square right sides together on the right side of a rectangle and sew a diagonal seam. Here's what they should look like with diagonal seams going from the top left to the bottom right corner of the G squares. Now before adding the left side square, go ahead and trim the excess fabric a 1/4 inch away from the seams that you just made, then press open the new triangle flaps. This is what they'll look like at this moment in time, and now it's time to place the left side G squares right sides together on the other side of your flying geese. You'll probably notice that there's some overlapping fabric in the center, but don't worry, that's exactly how it's supposed to look. Sew a diagonal seam going the same direction on all 4 units. If you're getting the hang of the stitch and flip method by now, you'll already know that the next step is to trim the corners a 1/4 inch away from the seam and to press the triangles open next. And just like that, our flying geese are complete. You can see I'm ready to piece my sawtooth star block together, and if you're familiar with the 4 at a time flying geese method, that's great too. But one reason I wanted to show you the stitch and flip version is because you can use smaller squares, making it a bit more scrap friendly. Plus, trimming is not needed since they come out to the exact size we need. My sawtooth star is ready to go, and I'll be back once the rest of the mini is pieced together. Alright, here's my mini quilt all finished up. Remember, don't forget to use those fabric labels, and I hope you enjoy making this one. Enjoy the process!